Hello, welcome to the seam line removal on complicated parts. This is the Dragoon on the Master Grade Strike Freedom, and I'll show you how to remove these unaesthetically pleasing seam lines from this piece. There's a total of 8 pieces, so this will be a fun project. But as you can see, a lot of undesirable seam lines here. If I can get the video focused. With some nub marks, which I'll explain how to fix those. Tools I'll be using is Tamiya extra thin cement or Tamiya cement. The difference between these two cements is that this one's thin and this one's thick. That's pretty much it. I would use the thick one to fill in gaps in case when you close the parts together and it's not a full contact connection. I would use the cement for that. Otherwise, if it's flush, if both parts are flush, I would use the extra thin cement. After the cement is dry, and you have to sand the seam away, so you need a sanding stick and some sanding sponges. I have 400 grit, 600 grit, and 800 grit. Those are my favorite grits. You also need a pencil to kind of mark where you're gonna apply the glue. Sometimes on a complicated piece, you may put a seam line. You might put cement somewhere where you don't actually want it to be, and that might create a mess. This is not a mechanical pencil. This is actually a scriber, which will be used to recover some of the detail after sanding, and some clamps to keep the part closed when you want to leave it unattended for a few minutes, allowing full contact at full pressure. First step is to prep the piece, so remove all your nub marks, and take the thing apart. Easy. Boom. To make it easier, I would cut the pegs at an angle, the male parts at an angle, and the female parts, the holes, I would cut a little wedge on both sides and larger holes, or one side and smaller holes, so that it's easier to take the piece apart and put back together easily. And the pencil will be used to help you mark which areas you don't want, or do want your glue to be. So I'll be using the thick cement. I'll have to warn that the cement does have a smell, so make sure you're doing it in a well-ventilated area. And I'm just gonna apply it to the surface, to the edge there, to this edge as well. Make sure it's on there nice and wet. You don't want to be too generous, you don't want to be goopy, have it run all over the place. Even this little hands, here. Next one. Sorry. Point it here, not this. This part. A little there. This one here. And this end slides. And this bottom part. Try your best not to get glue in your fingers. Now both sides have been applicated with glue, so now you just have to put them together. Like so. I like to dab a little bit more between the contacts. Do not worry, any mistakes can be sanded away or fixed with a bit of extra effort. Okay. Or first you want to make sure you squeeze it nice and tight. Try your best not to touch the glue. You know you got a good contact when you see a bit of the weld overflow a bit from the gaps. Because what cement does is that it's not like any normal adhesive. It melts the plastic together and bonds like welding. And if it's not beading at the seams, it's fine. You can always fill in the gaps with putty or any alternative tools. Alright, and I'm going to leave it alone. If you see any gaps, you can always go back and fill it more with cement. And I'll leave this alone for about an hour until it's completely dry, then the sanding process can begin. So 30 minutes to an hour has passed. In actuality, it's been more like 8 hours. So if you're doing this kind of repair stuff, cementing, I recommend doing it early in the morning or late at night when you want time to pass by quickly and not have to worry about this. Currently I have 4 dragoons at the moment, each at different phases. This is the preparation phase. There's no cement on it yet. There's cement on this one already. I'll explain more what it should look like if you have done a very good job of cementing. I would call this the repair phase, in case some of your cement didn't close the seam neatly and nice. And this is the completion. It's kind of hard to tell at the moment, but I will bring it closer for you to see. So when you have successfully cemented and waited patiently for time to pass, you should get something like this. Let's get camera focus here. There we go. You should see it sort of beading at the seam here. And that indicates that the two parts have made full contact and it's squeezing out the remaining cement, and now it's created a bead. So when you sand that off, it should be a nice flat surface. However, here there's a little gap here, but yeah, sanding at this point is viable. Once you've finished sanding, you would then use some putty to fill in the gaps or holes or any mistakes you have made in the process. And I'll show you how to apply that. And this is what the final product should look like after priming and another glance at review to see if there's any more mistakes on it. Then you are ready to paint this part and make it look flawless. So I'll show you how to sand. So the products I'm using to sand is 1000 grit, 800 grit, 600 sometimes. Then we go from 400, 240, 120. I'm not going to sand on camera. It's going to take way too long. But patience is a virtue, so it did take me a long time to get to the final product, and I would have to do 7 more of these, so that'll be fun. But here's how I did it. If you want to get most of the material off as fast as possible, I recommend using 120 or 240. These are the coarsest grits, so these will do a lot of damage. So if you're not careful, you can sand away too much and warp your part. 400 is a bit forgiving, 600 is forgiving, 800 is really forgiving, 1000 is just for visual clarity. This will not warp your part as much, but it will get rid of undesirable things like oh, I have putty in areas I don't need it, or cement. Also a sanding stick for flat and parallel surfaces. I do not recommend using flexible sponges on flat surfaces because wherever you apply pressure, it will cause the flatness of the part to not be parallel anymore. But I do recommend using these sponges on hard to reach places where the sanding stick may not be able to. And some sandpaper, matching the grits you see here. they can get into the very nook and crannies. Also, I use a scriber, so for parts like here, when I want to do some panel lining, since I sand a bit away, the panel line's kind of gone, so I'm gonna have to scribe it in again. So that's what scribe would be useful for. And also I would use tweezers. A cool trick about reaching hard places, like perhaps this tiny little area inside here in the vents, or here on the side, or where the beam comes from. Just put some putty here. This is a hard to reach place. Not even a sponge or sandpaper or a stick can reach that. So what I do is I cut out a little piece of the sponge. This is 800 grit. And I take my tweezers. I go in and just rub it. It is a very long process, long-ish process, and it's kind of weird, but it is how you sand hard to reach places. Another thing I want to explain is tomato putty. This thing takes at least 30 minutes to dry when you place it on. How I would like to use this is that I don't pour a drop out of the tube. Instead, I just open the cap, and whatever's inside already at the tip, I use a toothpick and I scoop some of it out, and I place it directly onto the part. Like so. And use something disposable like a toothpick, don't use a brush. It will ruin it. Thank you for watching a tutorial on how to remove seam lines on complicated parts. I hope this has been helpful to you. Remember to prime it after you're done so that you can see any mistakes that you can go over with after you're primed. And then sand it and then prime it again, and then once it's all nice and done, go over it with your desired paint. So hopefully this tutorial has been very helpful. I will do more similar to this, specifying probably tools that I use or paints. So keep an eye on that. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.